We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Welcome to the Man-Made Monstercast. I am Rob138, and it is the final week of Giallo in July. But before we get into today's film, I wanted to touch base on a brand new venture. I'm sure if you follow me on social media, you will see that I have announced No Life to Letterbox, a podcast experience. This will be whatever the hell that I want it to be with whomever the hell I want it to be with. It will tackle all things film, whether that be genre film, modern blockbusters, television, animation, whatever we feel like talking about. It's just going to be laid back, chill, fun, and not exclusively horror. Not that I have a problem with horror. Obviously, I have a horror podcast, and the Monstercast is going nowhere. But it allows me to blow off the barn doors, as it were, to get some more content out there to all of you. With that said, I've been working on some other content that, again, if you follow my social media, you'll see that I've been working on my YouTube channel. Just some gaming stuff, really. Some Fire Pro Wrestling, some little chit-chats, some pixel art style gaming, but mostly, and this is surprising to me, I started a vlog. Not something I was ever really super into. But if you watch them in order, you'll see us go on a journey, and as long as I'm hearing that these things are helping people, I'm going to continue to do them. I'm getting a lot more comfortable with doing them. The Monstercast. Let's talk about the Monstercast before we get into Blood and Black Lace. The Monstercast is going to go through some changes here in terms of scheduling. I'm not particularly sure if Monday will be the air date for this episode. Work is becoming incredibly busy, and I'm doing my best to manage my time accordingly. With that said, I am a one-man show. I am writing, I am researching, I am recording, I am editing, and that's not me crying about it. I love to do it because I love doing this for you guys. But I have to manage my time accordingly, which means the schedule might shift a bit. So, we're not going nowhere, just got some changes coming up. With that said, let's get into today's film, Blood and Black Lace by Mario Bava. Today we're going to find out if my Italian is as awful as my Japanese. Written by Marcella Fondata, Giuseppe Barilla, and Mario Bava, Blood and Black Lace tells the story of a well-known fashion house and its models. One night, a model named Isabella is found dead and her diary is found. Not only could it identify the killer, but it can bring to light the dark underbelly of the entire fashion house. So begins a string of grisly murders. So, before undertaking Blood and Black Lace, Mario Bava had produced several features with the Galetia Film Company, including Black Sabbath, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, Eric the Conqueror, and my personal favorite Mario Bava film, Black Sunday. But when Galetia Film fell in financial hardships, Bava was forced to work with other producers. This was something that would plague him the rest of his career, unfortunately. And here we go, I'm going to try it. Amepi Cinematograficia, there we go, who had only produced 4 other films and had minor contributions to the aforementioned Bava films, would sign on with Bava in 1963 to produce. Blood and Black Lace would have a much more modest budget when compared to Bava's prior works, with an estimated 180 million lire. I think I'm saying that correctly, lire? With 141 million being used in production costs. Comparatively, Black Sabbath had a budget of 205 million. Though there are varying degrees of information with respect to the actual authorship of the story, one thing is for sure is that the tone was lifted directly from the Giallo Mondadori series of pulp novels in the late 1920s and early 1930s. This is actually where the genre of gialli get their name. These pulp stories oftentimes featured murder mysteries and noir thrillers mixed with European eroticism. While Bava did not start this trend, he would retroactively be credited as having one of the first Giallo films. His was one of the first to feature the use of such rich and vibrant colors and what was, at the time, scenes of graphic violence and murder all wrapped up in hyper-sexualized tension. The film starred the lovely Eva Bartok as Contessa Christiana and Cameron Mitchell as Massima Morlacchi, and featured a score by Carlo Rusticelli. Rusticelli would compose the score for God Forgives, I Don't, Kill Baby Kill, The Whip and the Body, and one of my personal favorite sword and sorcery schlockfest, Throne of Fire. Filmed in only 7 weeks, the film would see release on April 10th in 1964 in Italy, and then in the US almost 1 year later on April 7th, 1965. Upon release, the film was considered a box office failure and would not even break the year's top 100 grossing films in Italy. More so, it saw scarce reviews, but those that it did receive praised Bava's visuals and filming techniques, but ultimately found the plot to be weak.
A house of high fashion, a dazzling whirl of elegance, of exotic, extravagant beauties. An adventurous journey into the devastating allure of the most sophisticated women and their intimate secrets.
Suddenly, these lace curtains ignite a drama that will lacerate your emotions. Blood and black lace. Who is this shrouded, sadistic, sordid fiend who maims and murders? Why this bloodthirsty orgy, this holocaust of lives? Blood and black lace in bleeding color. A shattering, shivering, shocking experience.
We open on the main theme, which is Killer, and we get a rundown of the cast and the opening credits. From here, we cut to a stormy night and the Christiana sign swaying in the rain. Right away, we are introduced to the seedy underbelly of the studio's inhabitants as two models are discussing a drug deal in the rain. It is suggested that Isabella would be the one to talk to. So we then cut to Isabella, who is walking the grounds before she is violently killed. I really like the killer's look here. There's something about the white, expressionless mask that will forever be unsettling that we would later see used in such classics as John Carpenter's Halloween. Completing the look, the killer would also be wearing a fedora, a trench coat, and black gloves. This would become the classic Giallo style here, which would later influence such designs as Rorschach in Watchmen and DC Comics' The Question. Later, the recently widowed co-manager of the modeling house, Countess Christiana, would find Isabella's body in a wardrobe, and this is where the mystery begins. Police Inspector Silvestri interviews the inhabitants of the fashion house, including the Countess and her new beau, Morlacchi, and Isabella's ex-boyfriend and current cokehead. During the inspector's investigation, Nicole finds Isabella's diary, which details all of the fashion house's sins, including, but not limited to, corruption, blackmail, drugs, abortion, and the various vices of the inhabitants. Peggy manages to steal the diary from Nicole during work, and that night Nicole drives to the aforementioned ex-boyfriend's antique shop, expecting to meet him there. Franco, however, is not there. Instead, we get a delightful cat and mouse chase because the killer was waiting for her. The killer catches her at the entrance and grabs her before proceeding to slam their spiked glove hand down into her face, instantly killing her. This is pretty creative stuff here. The killer then searches Peggy's body, seemingly for the diary, and then splits when they realize that she does not have it. From here, the murderer visits Peggy. They gain access to her apartment by knocking on the door. Yep, tried and true. Show up and knock. Peggy answers and the killer walks right in and proceeds to assault her with slaps. Peggy swears she doesn't have the diary anymore and that she burned it in the fireplace. When the killer checks the fireplace, Peggy tries to call the police. Enraged, the killer beats her unconscious and carries her off as the police arrive. Peggy is taken elsewhere and is tortured. The killer demands to know where the diary is. Peggy fights back and unmasks the killer. She recognizes them, but it is all for naught, as the killer murders her in quite brutal fashion by very slowly pressing her face against a burning furnace. Now, with all the victims being women, the inspector is utterly convinced that the murderer is some sort of sex-crazed lunatic, and he then proceeds to arrest all of the men in the fashion house. Very thorough. but not very intelligent. While all of the men are locked up, Greta finds Peggy's body in the trunk of her car. So a little bit of a mishap with this scene here. When filming this scene, Bava had warned actress Leah Launder that the trunk lid needed to be opened fully before she reacted to Peggy's body. In the first take, Launder did not open the trunk fully before reacting, and the trunk slammed back down onto the actress who played Peggy, striking her nose and just barely missing her eye. Bava would then halt filming to attend to Arden, the actress who played Peggy. Arden would then have a permanent scar, and years later joke that filming Blood and Black Lace almost killed her. Anyways, from here, the killer attacks Greta and kills her. After discovering more victims, Silvestri has no choice but to release all of the men. We cut to Morlacchi visiting Christiana, and this is where everything begins to come together. Morlacchi comments on how he assisted in the murder of Christiana's late husband, and then we learn that Isabella found out and began blackmailing him. When she started asking for more hush money, he killed her. It wasn't until after her death that the two had realized she was keeping a diary that revealed everything. We then learned that it was Morlacchi that killed Nicole and Peggy while attempting to retrieve the diary, and it was Christiana that killed Greta in order to give Morlacchi an alibi since he was arrested when the murder took place. Morlacchi tells Christiana that he needs her to kill one more time and they'll be safe. Initially, Christiana rejects the notion, but then she goes along with it. Morlacchi tells her that she needs to kill Taoli, but it needs to be made to look like a suicide and evidence left to ensure that the inspector believes that Lee was in fact the murderer the entire time. That night, Christiana, in complete killer attire, drowns Lee in a bathtub and slices her wrists. If you look closely, you can actually see the discolored part of actress Claude Dante's wrist, where the wound would appear. Christiana now has everything in place, but is startled by a banging on the door and a loud voice proclaiming to be the police. Obviously, Morlacchi is the quote-unquote police in this attempted double-cross. Christiana escapes to a second-story window, then tries to climb down a drain pipe. However, the pipe gives under her weight and she crashes to the ground. Later that night, we cut to Morlacchi searching through Christiana's desk. He opens a small chest full of jewels, but then is distracted. He turns back and the jewels are gone. Suddenly, a bruised and bloodied Christiana enters the room, shaking and aiming a gun directly at him. Christiana tells him she knows it was him and knows that he broke the drain pipe, knowing that she would use it because he's the one that suggested that that be her escape route. He tries to persuade her and almost gets his hand over the gun while they embrace, but Christiana fires and Morlacchi drops dead on the floor. Christiana then succumbs to her wounds and then drops dead next to him. The end. So Blood and Black Lace. It's a very straightforward one. Very straightforward. So let's get into it. The good. The film boasts really fantastic shot composition from Bava and his team. He knows exactly what he wants to shoot. He knows exactly how he wants it to look. And he knows exactly how to achieve it. Everything that he does here has purpose. The film is bright and vibrant, but also dark and unsettling in all the spots that it needs to be. The visuals are complemented by a better-than-average score that never distracts from what's going on, and top-notch set design that is more in line with the Hammer Gothic horrors than the murder mysteries of the time. The bad. I feel like the cast is pretty one-note. They're all perfectly acceptable at what they're doing, and they do it well. But barring the lead roles of Christiana and Morlacchi, no one really stands out to me. Unfortunately, that also leads me to the plot. Unfortunately, I agree with the reviews of the time period in that the plot is really one note, in my opinion, and it doesn't do much to stand out from other murder mysteries of the time. So my final thoughts. Well, you see, I have this weird relationship with Mario Bava in that when it comes to his Gialli, I had seen all of the things that came after him before I saw what came before them, being Mario Bava's work. I saw Deep Red, I saw The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, I saw All the Colors of the Dark, I saw The New York Ripper, etc., 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 all before I saw Blood and Black Lace. I was always aware of Bava's fingerprints on the greater Giallo genre, but I'd never started with his Gialli, which I feel somehow does a disservice to my knowledge of the genre. I know that when I posted my top 5 Giallo video on YouTube last week, a lot of you asked why Black Lace wasn't on my top 5 favorite Giallo films. And the answer is that while I enjoy it, frankly, I don't find the film better than the films that I've already listed, and I really feel like it gets a retrospective pass that's groundbreaking and iconic. And you know what? Listen, don't get me wrong. It is both of those things. But it does not mean that it is as good as some of those other films that I mentioned. When it comes to me and Mario Bava, I prefer his more supernatural and gothic stuff to this. Things like Black Sunday, Kill Baby Kill, and Black Sabbath. That's the Bava that I love. So with that said, what do I rate this film? You know, probably coming at me with the torches and the pitchforks here, but I think I gotta give it a 6.5 out of 10. I feel like it has a more plotting pace than most of the Gialli, and it suffers from a subpar plot that is ultimately very stock in my opinion. For me, the film is more style than substance, and if it were by anyone else than the legendary Mario Bava, it would probably get a lower rating from me. So there we have it. That is Blood and Black Lace, and I'm sure all of you are getting ready to unsubscribe from the podcast, but I joke. With that said, Giallo in July, man. We're at an end. I do want to say that I will be working on some Patreon exclusive stuff here soon, so look for that. Probably one more Giallo episode as I have something in my back pocket. I just have to find time to finish it. If you like what you've heard, please give us a 5-star review. Leave a review. Comment on all the things. Like, subscribe. You can find me with the Monstercast on YouTube at Man-Made Monstercast, on Twitter at MMMonstercast, on Instagram at Man-Made Monstercast. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for R0B138, on Twitter at R0B_138, on Instagram at R0B138, on Patreon, which will now house the Monstercast, the Kaiju Cast, and No Life to Letterbox. Patreon.com/R0B138. Please check out all of that fun stuff. Thank you for the support. Thank you for listening. We are wrapping up Giallo in July here. I've got some plans for the fall, but I won't talk about them just yet. But I'm looking for some unique stuff here, so look forward to that. Once again, I've been Rob138, and I will catch you on the flip side.